morning, everybody. It's Leah Etling with Running USA, and I'm so excited to be here today with Doug Olberding, who is the current president and CEO of Pigworks. And hi, Doug. How are you?
I am doing peachy keen today. I think we're a week and a half out from the marathon, so I'm recovered physically, emotionally, and I think mentally too. So it was an exciting uh, event, but also just the days leading up to it, as you know, can be quite taxing. But everything went really well. Happy.
Awesome. And I know that for you, it was sort of a different experience since you're just coming up on 1 year and your new role as president and CEO of Pigworks. Tell us a little bit about that year. What's it been like transitioning from academia into this exciting industry of ours?
From academia into this. Wow. Well, I'll tell you what, it was, it wasn't the transition that it might sound like because, as you mentioned, I had been on the board of directors for the Flying Pig since 2002. I think twice I served as the board chair. But also from 1994 to 2014, along with members of my family, managed a race here in Cincinnati called the Reggae Run, which for a time was the largest 5K in Cincinnati, and it was more than just your typical 5K. It was an evening event with a reggae concert. We had 35 food booths, and all that we basically, once you paid and you got in, all the food was free. So it was a completely different business model than what we're doing here, but just the logistics of arranging all that and loading in and loading out. And so I have some battle scars. Let's put it that
Well,
way.
that sounds like a cool event. Now that you're doing this full time, anything that's surprised you or been unexpected?
Well, I've said this when other people have asked me, and I don't know that it's surprising, but the staff here at Pigworks are really incredible. That's one of the things that is surprising in a really good way. I knew they were good, and it wasn't one of those situations where I had to come in and fix something that was broken. I had to come in and make sure something that was awesome continued to be awesome. So that's a different, sort of a different lift, I think. So that's been surprising. The other thing that is surprising to me that maybe I should have known, but I didn't really know until it started happening is how much the pig precedes me. When I tell people or they learn that I'm the CEO of the Flying Pig Marathon, they tell me the most wonderful stories. They'll tell me all about their life and how they, so it's like the power of the pig is actually it's very strong, and it's that was really surprising how many people have just told me how it changed their life, or somebody in their family, or volunteering. So that is a very pleasant surprise, and I've really enjoyed that.
The power of the pig is a very cool slogan. You should definitely put that on a t-shirt.
We do.
Uh,
Our swag is really good. So we the power of the pig, it is pretty incredible. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, going in that direction, talk to us about the 2025 Flying Pig. I heard really good things. What were some of the highlights?
Well, so it was challenging. There were highlights, but I'll start by saying that right before the 2024 event, we learned that the Duke Energy Convention Center, which is the big convention center here in Cincinnati, it's 180,000 square feet. That's how much we use of it. Was going to be taken offline for renovation. So what that meant was our expo, which is usually 85 to 90,000 people coming through in 2 days on a Friday and a Saturday, we had to find space to do that. And guess what? There's not another 180,000 square foot facility in the greater Cincinnati area. So what we had to do was go across the river. And northern, Cincinnati sits on the Ohio River. Right across the river is Kentucky, for those who aren't familiar with the geography here. And the city of Covington and the cities of Newport are right there. And so we use the Northern Kentucky Convention Center in Covington, which is about a third the size, so about 60,000 square feet, but it's on two levels, right? So it's not, it doesn't have the same, visual appeal when you walk into it because it's not 60,000 square feet on one floor. You're only looking at 30,000 square feet. So what that meant was we had to come up with a plan of how to get all these people through the expo to get their packets and everything like that. And so what we ended up doing was we expanded our expo days. We started the Friday before the marathon, Friday a week before the marathon, and we used a church that's close by Crossroads. They have a big atrium. It looks like a mall. It's one of those, places that almost looks like it's too modern to look like a church, but it's this big open space. And so we were able to use that for local pickup for the 1 mile, 5K, and 10K, our Friday and Saturday events, right? So we did that on the Friday and Saturday before. We had to take it down on Sunday, and then we loaded into the Northern Kentucky Convention Center on Tuesday, and we did local packet pickup for the 5K and 10K on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then Thursday, Friday, and Saturday was pickup for our Sunday events. And then we had to transfer the 5K and 10K pickup to the concourse of Paul Brown Stadium. So we were actually having packet pickups in two locations. And as you can imagine, the challenge really was messaging, right? Messaging had to be super clear, because everyone, for as long, even the people that live in Cincinnati, at one point when we announced it, people gave us some pushback. So I grabbed one of our staffers and I said, let's grab the pig costume. And we put it in the car and we drove downtown, and she stood on the street corner and put our pig mascot costume. And we stood right in front of the construction entrance to the convention center. And I was crying like this, and she was patting me on the back. And that's what we posted on social media. If you want to know
Brilliant.
why we're doing it at Northern Kentucky, look behind me. That's why. Because
Oh
people
my
need to
goodness.
realize,
Well,
local, if
yeah.
you don't
And
come downtown, you're not going to know, right?
how was the foot traffic? How did it all go in the end?
It went really well. It was surprising. There was, a little confusion, but the foot traffic went really well. Our biggest fear was that nobody would pick up their 10K packets, which is our 7 a.m. Saturday morning race, and we'd have a gigantic line. But what we did was we got two 30 by 60 tents. Normally we would just have one. We got two 30 by 60s, and we put pig abilities and the 5K in one, and we put the youth races and the 10K in the other. So there was no cross pollination. They had their own lines. Plus, I think by the time we got to race day in the 10K, I think we had all but about 1,200 of them picked up. So we got a lot of people through. So it did go well. It really did go well. For our vendors, we had smaller sort of expo space, right? The upstairs was our vendors. So like Fleet Feet and Queen City Running and some of those were up there in a much smaller space. We couldn't accommodate everybody that would normally be at our expo, but they reported really good sales. I went up there on Saturday, and Queen City had nothing on their tables. They had sold out of everything. So I think they were very, very happy. I think they were nervous on Thursday when we opened the expo and nobody was coming upstairs. And but Thursday was light, but by end of Thursday, Friday, Saturday, the place was packed the whole time. So.
Well, talk about a curveball, but it sounds like you got a good hit off of it anyway. You shared a fun fact with me as we were chatting before the call about one of your staff members and his Strava at the end of the weekend. Do you want to share that with
Oh
everybody?
yeah, yeah. So normally the expo opens we load in on Thursday, expo opens Friday, Saturday, then we have our races and we're done. So this is, I think he looked at his Thursday to Sunday Strava and he had 63 miles. That's with 63 miles. And I don't track my steps like that. I'm kind of old school. I got a Ironman triathlon digital thing. It doesn't do anything but tell me my splits or anything like that. So I wasn't really keeping track of it, but I could tell physically. By the time I got home on Sunday, I just laid against the wall with my feet straight up in the air and just let the blood rush out of my legs and go back into my body. So,
Oh my goodness. Well, aside from that monstrous pivot, what were some of the other highlights of the weekend?
oh, there's always the emotional ones. I mean, there's some really, I mean, anyone that does this, you know, you have these moments where, for me personally, it's hard for me to like hold back tears and things like that. And so there was one especially, it meant a lot to me because the woman reminded me of my mom. We have the 50 West Mile that kind of kicks everything off. It's a 1 mile race, and a lot of people do it because if they do our challenges, which are named after the chili that's famous in Cincinnati. There's the three-way and the four-way. If you're not from Cincinnati, you've never had Cincinnati chili. When you say three-way, people get all these weird thoughts in their mind. But it's the way we eat chili here in Cincinnati. But if you do the 1 mile with one of those challenges, we call that a three-way with extra cheese, right? So people will do this. We get a good number of people that'll sign up. One of the last finishers to come across the line, and she was walking very slowly with her daughter and her granddaughter with her. She crossed the line and she told me, she says, I'm 94 years old. This is the first race that I've ever done. She was so proud of herself, so happy. I put the medal around her neck and she was telling everybody, I did. And it was just like, oh my God. Somebody took a great picture of me putting this medal around her neck and she's just looking up at me like this was the best thing that ever happened to her in her life. It was one of those and there's a bunch of stuff like that that happens, but that was a particularly strong one. The other one that I'll tell you that I think has been that I mentioned to the newspaper, we don't take the finish line down. We want to get everybody across the line, so if they fall behind our sag wagon, we have a move to the sidewalk. But then what we've done is we have a support crew that basically picks up the race at about 16 miles and they stay with our last finishers. They've got medical supplies and food and everything like that, and we resupply them as needed. So our last guy, we got a report that he was at mile 25. It was about 9 hour and 30 minute point of the race, and he was clocking 40-minute miles, 40. It was taking him 40 minutes to go a mile. So we knew it was going to be an over a 10-hour day. So I turned to the interns. I said, look, you guys, if you feel like you're done today, you can go. And they said, no, we want to stay here with him. And I said the same thing to our key staff. Look, if you feel like you're done, and everybody stayed. So what ended up happening was we couldn't take down the trusses yet because we wanted him to finish. So we had all of us standing there at the end with the forklift truck drivers, these big burly guys. And here he comes, and he's got our support crew with him, and they're almost holding him up. They get about 10 yards before the finish line. They let him go, and he walks across the line under his own power, and the place just erupts. I mean, like everybody's clapping. We have one of our interns, a college cheerleader. She's doing backflips and stuff like that. And one of the forklift truck guys was just sobbing like a baby as he saw this guy cross. He was probably 70 years old, the guy that finished. That was really cool. And that was like, we had been there all day. By the time I packed up and was going home, it was like quarter till 7 at night. It was a
Oh my
long.
gosh. Well, you've almost caught me in tears just hearing that story. That sounds like an amazing moment. Now, I know everybody loves your race, so I don't know what you could possibly change to make it better, but any thoughts about things you want to improve or do in the future?
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that we do, and I've talked about this at Running USA, we have a really fabulous partnership with a company here in town called Burke Incorporated. They're a market research firm. They've been doing this for 93 years. They're almost a 100-year-old company. They're really, really good. I always tell people their kung fu is so good. They've got the best kung fu. And one of the things that they've done with us for a long time is our runner satisfaction survey. So our runner satisfaction survey is in the field right now. And we will typically get anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 responses. We do stratified random sampling, and they will analyze all the results. The thing that we do, which is really, I think, important, is we do something that we call our sort of runner satisfaction index. It's 3 questions. How satisfied were you with this year's event? How likely are you to come back and do it next year? And how likely are you to recommend it? So when we take that and we get a composite index from that, we know that we want to listen to the people who love us, who are coming back, and who are going to talk about us. If they hate us, they're not coming back, and they're not going to talk about us. We really don't really care what they say, right? Because the people who love you will tell you how to improve. So we'll take that and overlay it over. We have, I think, like 46 event attributes. And what we'll get back here in a couple of weeks is all of our event attributes, regressed against that runner satisfaction index. So it'll say something like, maybe something will be, we might get something that they'll say, oh, it was too crowded at the finish line or something like that. But we'll look at the overall satisfaction. It's like it was crowded at the finish line, but nobody really cared, right? It wasn't something that was driving satisfaction. But
Mhm.
something like volunteer support on the course or water stops, that's something that drives satisfaction. So you want to fix the things that are driving your overall satisfaction. If something's not working but it doesn't really have an impact in their overall satisfaction, you can work on it if you need to, but it's not the most important thing. So when you say, how are we going to improve the race, first thing I need to do is get our results back, and that's where we'll start.
Got it.
But there's other things that we're looking at doing. We're always looking at our event makeup. We're really excited right now while we're doing all of this. We are sort of letting ourselves be guinea pigs again for Burke. They've got a new sort of product development platform that to get ideas to market quicker. And so typically there's a lot of focus groups and face-to-face interaction. So they're deploying a new AI tool that they've got. And the idea is we wanted to develop an event for targeted towards Gen Z, right? Because Gen Z has different attitudes about running and fitness than you and I do, right? They do it for different reasons. If you have beer at the end, that doesn't drive them at all. They don't care about that. They don't even want it there, right? So the idea was to go through this product development process. We're beta testing their application, and to have an event for Gen Z launched in 2026 that
Oh,
is
wow.
on the scale of the Queen Bee. So it's
Mhm.
going to be the guardrails is it has to be a 5,000 person event.
Okay. And completely separate from all your other current races.
Just it goes into our mix.
Okay.
So we're at the point right now where we started out with 55 idea nuggets.
Mhm.
And we have now, with our meeting on Friday, we've got the 4 idea nuggets that they're going to completely build out. We're going to have 4 completely built out events by the end of next week. And then we'll go through the final evaluation and select the one that we're going to do first part of June. So.
Okay, well, I'm flagging that because I think that could be a very cool Running USA session. I think people will be really interested to hear about what you picked.
Yeah, yeah, that would be good. Offline, go ahead and talk to me about the Running
Sure.
USA thing. I'd love to talk about it. I'd love to bring Michael along too. He's been the Running USA before, and it would be a great thing to talk about. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, final question, and I want to turn the page a little bit to one of your areas of expertise, which is really about the economic impact of events. And I'm really targeting this question more for our mid to smaller events who might be listening in, those who
Mhm.
have less than 10,000 participants. What tips would you have for them about how to measure economic impact if they're not already doing so? Any resources that you might be able to suggest, or just ways to get started?
Yeah, I think, part of it is there's a lot of like I think there's a lot of misinformation about economic impact, what's included, how do you calculate it, everything like that. For events like ours, Flying Pig, and for running events in general, the economic impact of your event is going to be driven by out of town visitors, right? So typically, if I'm from Cincinnati and I run the Flying Pig, that's just money I was going to spend in the economy anyway, so you can't really count it. Um, but when people come to your city, register for your event, run your event, stay in your hotels, eat at your restaurants, everything that is associated with the visit. That's money that would not be in your economy but for that event. So you can count that. So the first thing is knowing how many out of town visitors you have, right? And understanding the area of impact. So um, for us in Cincinnati, the area of impact is not the city of Cincinnati. It is the 13 county metropolitan statistical area around Cincinnati. So if they come from Butler County, they don't live in Cincinnati, but they're in our region, so we technically can't count that money. So it's basically knowing your area of impact, and then being able to communicate with those people outside, and ask them specific questions about where they spent their money and how much they spent. Because what you spend in at a gas station doesn't have the same economic impact as what you spend at a restaurant. So you have to know sort of sector specific spending. That all sounds very complicated, and in a sense it is. But I think one of the things that I would do is reach out to your local chamber of commerce or Better Business Bureau, because a lot of times they have capacity or can connect you with people that have capacity to do this kind of work. For me personally, before I was here at the Pig, I was at Xavier University and I was a professor there. And when I first got hired in 2002, you have to publish or perish. And so I reached out to the board and said, "Hey, has anyone done an economic impact of the marathon?" The marathon was only 3.5 years old at that time. And they said, "No, we'd love it." So I got an economist friend of mine, and we sort of put the plan together and did that first one way back then. So since then we've done it like every 2 years, and I will say now, sitting in the seat that I'm in right now, it gets a lot of mileage. It means a lot to chambers of commerce, city council, if you have a county commission or something like that, anybody that's about the tourism industry and supports events with public dollars. Uh, this is something that you can put in your. It's a bullet that you can put in your. I don't like to use bullets. It's an arrow. It's a something from your quiver. Is that what it's called? Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Awesome. Well, thank you, Doug. That was great insight. Always so fun to talk to you, and really appreciate it.
Well, I love doing these things, and so anytime you want to give me a call, happy to yap.
Amazing. Congrats on your first full event weekend under your belt in the new role.
Thank you, Leah.